Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Krashy, and today we have a pretty interesting buff, nerf, and balance tier list for y'all, where I'm going to try to explain all the different Pokemon that need buffs, how I would maybe buff them, need nerfs, how I would maybe nerf them, and then the ones that I think are balanced. So we'll dive into each character, but before we do that, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Ewin Gaming Racing. I have a beautiful Flash XL Series gaming chair. This is the heavy-duty chair. It holds a ridiculous amount of weight. They asked me to hold something heavy one time, so I can do that. I'm always lifting on stream with it. It's got great material. It's comfortable. It is completely adjustable. You can recline back, forward. You can tilt the arm handles inward, outward, up, down, and ultimately, it is incredibly great material and comfortable. So if you're in the market looking for a chair, this one is my favorite gaming chair. I've had two gaming chairs. I have one in the other room, this one here, and this one is just my favorite. The material is holding up well. It's beautiful, and I absolutely love it, and it's super comfortable for streaming. So I definitely do appreciate it. Check out the link in the description. You can use code Krashy to support me and support the sponsor, Ewin Gaming Racing, for a 20% off code with code Krashy. So check them out. They have other products as well. And yeah, let's dive into the video. All right. Here we are into the buff and nerf tier list. We have three different tiers: buff, balanced, and nerf. And I'm going to give my thoughts. I'm going to try to get through this without taking too much time. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to start with the all-rounders, Azumarill. Now, I do think that Azumarill still needs some buffs. Oops, look at that. The heck? I just made him super tiny. I do think that Azumarill still needs some buffs. It's not that this Pokemon is like too terrible or anything. It actually just needs like slight changes. And I don't even really have much of an opinion on it. I think it can maybe do a little bit more damage, maybe a little bit more health, slightly lower cooldowns, some like little bit of quality of life for this Pokemon that I think that could really push it up towards the kind of like higher like tiers would definitely be good for Azumarill. But it feels a little underwhelming at times, and I definitely would like to see a buff for it. As for Aegislash, I think Aegislash is really strong, but I would hate to see this Pokemon like butchered. So I'm thinking it's mostly balanced. If anything, it needs probably, and this is the weird thing about it, if anything, it might need nerfs, maybe a little bit, but at the same time, its Offset, Iron Head, and Shadow Claw both need buffs. So I think overall the Pokemon's balanced and could see some changes to either which side, so mostly just feeling like it's leaning toward balance. I'd love to know y'all's thoughts on Aegislash. It doesn't feel too overwhelming to me, and so I'm pretty happy putting it there. Dragonite. So Dragonite's a really interesting one. It's very similar. A part of me thinks that it needs to be nerfed because I think that Hyper Beam is just a little bit silly, but this could also be an issue with the objectives. So I do think that Dreadnought, Rotom, and Zapdos all need more health, or maybe they can find some kind of a way to separate the damage from players and damage from objectives, so that way they could kind of like put a hard cap on Hyper Beam for Dragonite. But same thing as Aegislash, it has this offset moveset that's just not very good. Extreme Speed, Outrage, it's just not really good, not really competitively viable, not even really solo queue viable to a good degree. And ultimately, I think that it's in this weird spot where I think that Hyper Beam probably needs to get nerfed, but overall, I think that the character could see some pretty big changes. So another one of those, for the sake of saying in terms of the meta, I think that Hyper Beam could see some changes, maybe small changes, or that could be more of an issue with objectives. And honestly, just depending on where you look at it, I could put this character in balance and say that objectives need to go up in health, because I do believe that as well. Serena. Oh man, I'm leaning closer to balanced, but Stomp is just so strong. I would hate to see them nerf this character and then her be useless. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it in balanced, but a part of me thinks that it might need small nerfs. Small nerfs. And Serena's probably a little bit more dominant than Dragonite. So even the same thing here, like I kind of want to take Dragonite and put it in balanced as well. I don't know. It's really bizarre because we're talking such small margins. If anything, Serena does need to get small nerfs. Because she still just does so much damage. I think that I gotta lean that direction instead of putting them in balance. I think that both these Pokemon could see a little bit of nerfs. We just have this really heavy, divey, big bursty kind of meta, and it's a little crazy. You know what's crazy? I think that I might be leaning towards balanced for Lucario, and it's because the character is mostly balanced. I'm not gonna lie, I still want to see like the early game nerfed. I'm gonna put it in nerf too. I want to see Meteor Mash nerfed. I don't really want to see much else change for this character. I just think that I really hate the laning phase of this character. It feels so stupid. And early Extreme Speed is really strong, but I don't even know if we would touch that at all. It's mostly just Meteor Mash. I think Meteor Mash sometimes makes farming against Lucario like impossible feeling, and it's not very fun. Garchomp is a really easy one. This character is probably bottom 5, really bad. It needs changes to its, like, it needs some kind of quality of life for movement speed. It needs changes to dig, for dig to be a little bit stronger. It probably needs crits back on Dragon build. It just needs a lot of love. It's really struggling. As for Charizard, I'm going to put Charizard as mostly balanced. If they're going to change anything, they could buff maybe Fire Punch, maybe Flare Blitz a little bit to make it a little bit more even, but I'd say Flare Blitz is okay. The issue with Charizard is the Unite move, quality of life. Like, maybe they can make it to where you don't lose so much percentage if it does get canceled, but overall I feel like Charizard is pretty balanced. And Machamp actually I think is overall pretty balanced as well. I don't have too many issues. This character is incredibly strong, but it feels pretty solid. Again, if anything, same thing. You could buff the offset. Submission cross chop is not super great. You could find some kind of ways to buff those in a unique way. All right, let's move into attackers. Delphox. You know, I could see why someone might want Delphox nerfed, because Fire Spin is annoying, but it's like the only thing keeping this SP attacker viable in my opinion. I think Flame Charge needs to be buffed. And yeah, that's my opinion. I think that Delphox is mostly balanced. I'm pretty happy with that. Espeon, there's still just something missing for Espeon. It feels like the character doesn't quite have enough cooldown reduction, or doesn't quite have enough damage, or, you know, there's no mobility there. It just feels like this Pokemon is just slightly missing something, but it's really close. Maybe just a little bit more damage on Espeon could give this character a really good feeling. Maybe some cooldown reduction, or yeah, I don't know, something like that would be really interesting. Now this one I'm a little on the fence about, but I just, every time I play Duraludon, I feel pretty outclassed. Yeah, Flash Cannon is like okay. Dragon Pulse is like good, but it just, the ult gets canceled on this Pokemon. Can't really lane this Pokemon super well, so you have to kind of jungle it, and even if you do jungle or lane it, it's not the best pick out there. It just kind of feels like a dead pick ever since they nerfed it, and yeah, it's just not great. There's better potential objective secures and like big burst for objectives. And Duraludon, I'd like to see this character be a little bit changed. I don't even really have any ideas for it. Just something. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. Sylveon feels mostly balanced to me. I think that Sylveon, if anything, probably could see some buffs, maybe to Mystical Fire. But overall, I'd say Sylveon is pretty balanced. It's one of those SP attackers that actually still does feel pretty good, although the early laning phase is a little bit rough until you get to level 4. But overall, I'm pretty comfortable with Sylveon. Like I said, you can see some offset buffs, but overall, pretty happy with it. Alolan Ninetales. I think that this character just falls off really hard, and unfortunately, with the current state of the meta is just really divey and like attack focused. So I'd like to see an Alolan Ninetales get a bit of a buff. I don't really have an idea. Maybe more damage, maybe more cooldown reduction, spell vamp. Honestly, a part of me with a lot of the SP attackers in this game feels like it's just the items. The items are just not that good. So even something like an indirect buff to like Wise Glasses could maybe help this Pokemon a lot. Or finding some kind of a way to just put a little bit more damage. Take all the scalings of all the moves and just up it a little bit more so the items that we do have can help this Pokemon a lot. So that's definitely my thought. Greninja, I actually think Greninja's balanced. Character's terrible in lane, but it's a good jungler. It hard carries in solo queue at times, but there's some counters to it with other like all-rounders and divey kind of characters. Greninja is feeling pretty solid to me right now. Water Shuriken Double Team is honestly good. It's just Surf Smokescreen is really good, so I don't have any offset issues with it. I really don't have any issues with Greninja. It can stomp solo queue really hard, but overall I think that the character is in a pretty good spot. As for Cramorant, it's honestly simple. This character needs a Unite move buff. This character brings CC to the table. It has high mobility. It's got a couple of good builds that you can run. It needs a little bit more damage. Again, maybe Wise Glasses, Choice Specs buff, something like that. But also, it just needs a better Unite move. The Unite move is just still pretty underwhelming ever since they nerfed it. And I'm going to feel the same way, I think, about Cinderace when it comes to Greninja. I don't really have a ton of issues with this character. Honestly, the only thing I would nerf about these characters is because they're not very strong laners. They come out of jungle with red buff, and ranged red buff is annoying. But that's a jungle issue, so I don't really have any issues with them. Pyro's still pretty decent. Feint is pretty decent, although the main set moves are better. I don't really have much to say. Yeah, not much to say about Cinderace. Pikachu. I think Pikachu is another one of these just mage Pokemon, SP attacker Pokemon that could see some buffs. I don't know what it is, and it's not like Pikachu's super weak, but there's just something about these characters. Again, I think something as simple as indirect nerfs or indirect buffs to Wise Glasses, Choice Specs, something like that, or even just taking all of the SP like mages the ability caster Pokemon, and just increasing their scaling by a little bit would go quite a long way for some of these Pokemon. So who knows? Maybe we'll see them do something like that. Venusaur feels mostly balanced to me, but it's still the same thing, right? We're talking about these SP attackers. It could see some buffs, but I don't really have any ideas. And I feel like of all the SP attackers, Venusaur's still kind of holding strong a little bit with Delphox and maybe even Sylveon. So it's hanging in there. Again, I'm going to say the same thing. Maybe slight buffs, maybe slight scaling buffs, indirect buffs with the items. And I'm going to literally say the same thing for Gardevoir, although, again, Gardevoir I think is a little bit stronger. But this is another jungler, so a little bit stronger, a little bit stronger for Gardevoir because she does come out of the jungle and then scales really, really well. That's the thing with Gardevoir and Venusaur. At least they scale super, super well. Some of the aforementioned SP attackers in the buff list, they just don't scale super well, so definitely doesn't help. Decidueye could definitely use some love. I really don't, I don't know what it is. You can't just give this character too much damage, and I really have no idea other than maybe just changing the Unite move. Maybe give it a little bit more health. I don't even know if that matters. We just have such an ABSOL, divey, all-rounder, divey kind of comp and or meta right now. I don't know what you do to Decidueye, but this character just doesn't feel it. It doesn't feel it at all. Maybe you could buff Leaf Tornado to actually push a little bit farther, or I don't know, just to do something. I don't know. I don't know what you do to Decidueye. I'd love to hear some thoughts on that one as well, but yeah, not a huge fan of Decidueye. Trevenant, I would say, is probably, as we move into defenders, is probably mostly balanced. But the thing with Trevenant is like Pain Split is still really, really bad. Otherwise, I'd say this character is really, really strong, but I don't find it to be an issue, right? Like, I'm not just running into every game, like, hoping there's not a Trevenant. It just doesn't seem like it's super oppressive, so I think that that's kind of okay. Trevenant feels mostly balanced. As for Mamoswine and most defenders, to be honest, could definitely see some buffs. This character just doesn't scale well. Maybe, again, I've made a whole video talking about defenders recently. I think almost as a blanket, they should just buff defenders' tankiness. Like, give them more health, give them more defense, give them more SP defense, and just see what that feels like. So that's going to be a lot of the theme whenever it comes to talking about defenders. They just don't really feel tanky enough, and I think that that shows a lot in the way that the lack of these characters actually getting played. Same goes for Crustle. Basically, every defender in the game, it either does damage or it's useless. And Crustle can actually do some damage, but at the same time, there's just better like all-rounders to pick. If you're playing damage Crustle, you might as well just pick Serena or something. So yeah, Crustle could definitely see some tankiness buffs. Greedent is mostly balanced. I think if anything, I'm going to put it here because it's definitely not as much like needing detrimental changes as much as some of the other defenders are. It's mostly balanced. I think if anything, maybe you could give Greedent, I don't know, maybe a little bit more tankiness. Like I'm talking slightly. Maybe a tiny bit more damage. Does it even need that? Probably not. Greedent would be super annoying. I think Greedent was mostly balanced. I'd love to know some thoughts on that one as well. As for Snorlax, this character is like the tank of the game, the one that is truly just like a front wall tank, but it's not tanky. Quality of life changes to this Pokemon's Unite move, maybe to act like a small cute charm, maybe to do a little bit more damage, apply, you know, like a big slow around his body, heal him faster and make him be able to stand up, increase the time that the full duration of that, or like decrease the time that the full duration of it lasts, so that way you're not just laying there forever, but you heal really fast and then you stand back up. I don't know what it could be. And then increase stats, like make him tankier. Yeah, I don't know what it could be. As for Scaldbro and Slowbro in general, it's weird. I think that Scald needs a nerf, damage-wise. I'm going to put it here because that's kind of mostly what's getting played. But I think that Surfbro is mostly balanced and maybe even needs some tankiness buffs. They need to like repurpose Slowbro a little bit. Scald can be damage focused, but it can't be taking the place of these mages. Like it's literally a better mage than most of the mage Pokemon and the SP attackers. So Scald needs a nerf. Slowbro with Surf, like in a tanky build, maybe, like I said, as a blanket, might need some more defense and health to kind of give that tanky feel. We need tanks to kind of get reworked almost in general. Blastoise still needs buffs. If you I mean, you have like this damage dealing all-rounder tank, but it doesn't really do enough damage anymore. Laning phase is weak. I think that we just need defensive. Like, we need defense buffs so these tanks actually feel like tanks. That would feel pretty good to me. All right, as for the Speedster role, let's move over to Talonflame. I think Talonflame needs some buffs. This character has just, like, it always is, like, in and out of the meta, just depending on what's going on. It's just not the jungler right now. It doesn't really do enough damage. It got nerfed. I forget what the nerf even was, but it got nerfed a little while back. and it just never really recovered. I think that the crazy thing is, and I'm going to say it, is that I think if we had a pick ban phase, this character would maybe be viable, because you could ban out some things and then selectively pick this Pokemon on purpose. Because I think that buffing this Pokemon feels dangerous, but in the current climate without a pick ban phase, you have to look at Talonflame and assume that it needs buffs, because I don't know how else we would make this Pokemon work. So, kind of what I'm thinking, maybe some damage buffs, maybe some cooldown buffs. I really don't even know. I really don't know how you buff this character without just making it busted, because it's pretty strong, it's decently strong, but it's not jungle, you know, A tier plus kind of strong. Gengar. It's weird. I think that this Pokemon is probably mostly balanced. It doesn't get played in 5s. I don't really know what could solve that. Again, it might just be another case of pick ban phase, like needing a reason to pick this Pokemon. Otherwise, it might just be too niche. But overall, I'd say Gengar, Sludge Bomb, Hex could probably get some buffs. Overall, I'd say Gengar's pretty balanced. It feels pretty good in solo queue. I would be afraid of buffing it, and I definitely don't think it needs nerfs. So we're going to have to leave it there. As for Zeraora, this is an easy buff. Easy buff. It at minimum needs 579, or not even 579. It could go, you know, 7, 8, 9. It needs Unite Move at level 9. This character has just been left in the dust, and we all know that it has a lot of potential, but it's pretty ridiculous. ABSOL needs nerfs. It does too much damage. Simple as that. It does way too much damage. I don't even need to talk about it. Koopa, we're moving into supports, needs nerfed. This character has dumbed the game down to a ridiculous level, especially in competitive, to where people and teams just don't even need super strong macro play. It's silly, man. You have Hyperspace Hull just porting people all over the place, healing people. You have you know, the Unite move pulling people in. I think that what you do to this character is you literally make it to where each port can only take like 2 people. You probably have to build a UI for it, so it pops up like a little box and it shows that there's only 2 slots available, and then your team has to manage that. That would get a little weird in solo queue. This character just does way too much. It's pretty silly. It's really insane. Mr. Mime needs buffs. The craziest thing about Mr. Mime is that I don't know what you do if you don't give this character damage or tankiness, and it's supposed to be a support. So maybe Guard Swap can get the healing earlier and increase it so it's an actual healer. I don't know. But for the other build, like Confusion Barrier, you have to just give it damage, right? Like, or you have to make it tanky to be tank. Mr. Mime's just a weird design, man. It's one of those things they kind of just have to pick what they want to do with it, but nerfing it made it unusable. So, a little unfortunate. Eldegoss, call me crazy. This character's balanced. This character's balanced. The reason we don't see it competitively is because of Hoopa. I think this character is perfectly balanced. I don't have anything to say about it. And the irony with Wigglytuff is I'm probably going to put it under buffs because I feel like that's where she sits perceptionally, but I actually don't think Wiggly is that far off from meta. I actually don't know what they should do with this character. Because if they buff its like tankiness, then it's a tank and it's supposed to be a supporter. I don't know. I really don't know. And this is the conundrum with these character designs. Like, yeah, they're supporters, and I guess maybe I shouldn't care about that too much. I don't know what to do with Wigglytuff. Maybe buff the Unite move, make the shield bigger, make Wiggly a big buddy barrier, I guess. I don't know. To make it where you really want to have her. She also might be a pick ban phase kind of character where, like, yeah, we're just kind of stuck in a weird scenario where picking Wiggly just isn't play because there's just better picks. So, yeah. And Blissey needs to be nerfed. Blissey definitely needs to be nerfed. I wasn't sure if I was going to need more space. I ended up having all this space. But yeah, Blissey definitely needs to be nerfed. This character does too much damage with Unite move. It heals a ridiculous amount. It can anti-CC with Safeguard if you go that route. I just think this character is doing too much and it's playing a tank role. The first thing I would do, actually the only things I would do, hey look, I have a little virus pop up from Windows, thanks. The only things that I would do with Blissey, I would start by nerfing the Unite move damage a little bit, and I would finish off by taking this character's HP at level 15 down to like 7k. I do not think that this character should be even close to viable as a tank. And this is part of my initiative to want to buff tanks too. I think the tanks actually need to be tanky, and I think that supports probably shouldn't be tanky. But I don't know how they achieve that with some of these character designs. So, I don't know, maybe for some of them. For the healing tank, I don't think that this character should be a healing tank running around healing 100k health. It's just my thoughts. But friends, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, it's weird because you have to think about the fact that we have mirror matches and not all of these characters can be played. We have a ton of characters, but not all of them can literally be picked. Some of these characters need buffs for offsets, main sets, or like perceptionally what is the main ability set. I'd love to know your thoughts. So friends, thank you so much for watching. Drop a like on the video, subscribe for future Pokemon Unite content. As always, be sure to be kind to one another. Tell someone you love them, and I'll see you in the next video.